Hi, I'm Melissa Hauke, and I am your presenter for today for the workshop of Students with Interrupted Education Can Read. During this presentation or short workshop, you're going to see how to use a daily message as a way to incorporate reading, oral proficiency, even a little bit of grammar as well. Before we get started, just so you know, learn something about me, I am a high school ESOL teacher for Fairfax County Schools. I teach English language development for this year for level 2s, and I also am teaching English 10 for level 3s, which are intermediates. I am not teaching SIFE students this year, but for the last 3 years, I did teach SIFE students in a class called Literacy Essentials, so a reading class designed just for that population. When I was assigned that group of students, I decided that using this morning message would be a great way to build those literacy skills that our students need. Before I was a high school teacher, I was an elementary school teacher for grades, mostly grades 1 and 2, and I taught students who were English language learners. And I found that using this message was very powerful with them. They enjoyed it, and they developed a lot of good skills from it. So let's go ahead and just dive right in to the PowerPoint. So here are the goals for today. I'm going to show you what the basic news, daily news looks like. I'll explain how I build oral proficiency, different ways to scaffold it, and then a couple of ideas how you can adapt it to your virtual teaching environment. And before we go too far, let's go ahead and talk about what a SIFE student is. So a SIFE student is going to be very limited in English, probably a beginner. They may speak, maybe they don't speak any English, or if they do speak English, it's very limited. They may or may not read in their primary language, right? And they may or may not read in English. So we're not really sure how much literacy skills they actually have. They may know the alphabet, maybe. They probably aren't going to know the sounds of the letters. So these are things that we're going to have to, teach them. Probably our students have experienced some sort of trauma. And even if they haven't experienced trauma, they are experiencing culture shock. They've just moved to a new place where everything is different. So regardless of whether it's trauma or culture shock, they are going to have difficulty retaining information because of this. So we're going to have to teach things to them over and over again until they can finally begin to process it. So when I teach my SIFE reading class, we begin each day by reading quietly. Now, if you'll notice, I have reading in quotation marks, and that is because for the first maybe month, most students probably aren't actually reading. They might have a book open, and if they do, they're probably looking at pictures. But that's okay, because what we're trying to accomplish is to get them used to having a book, developing a relationship, if you will, with a book. Most of these students will have not been around books very much. Some of them might not even know how a book works, right? Which way does it open? How do the pages turn? These kinds of things. So we really want them to become lovers of books. And the only way we can do that is to get those books in their hands and to allow them to explore. And so because of that, I don't really put any requirements on them. I let them choose their own book. And it's important that they have this choice, because just like you like to choose your own books, they'll never become independent readers if we don't let them choose their own books. Now later in my class, we have a book that we read together and that they, I teach from. But this first part is really just to help them develop a relationship with books. So they get the book, they spend 10 minutes with it. They might go through a couple of books. That's okay. We just want them to have a book and to start exploring it. At first, I don't have them do anything but just read for 10 minutes and then put the book in the basket, and then we meet for our circle. After maybe a month or so, I might give them a reading log where they write down the title and the author, and then make a quick evaluation if they like the book or not, with a happy face or an unhappy face. And realize them locating the title and the author may be a huge accomplishment. They might not know which is the title, who's the author. And then of course, when they're doing this, they're also working on those skills of transferring information from one source to another. They're practicing letter formation. All of these things are really important for SIFE students. So I give them a couple of minutes to fill out their reading log. If they don't fill it out, I don't worry, right? Again, I'm trying to make this reading time at the beginning of class something that they look forward to and something that they enjoy. So from there, we go ahead and we transition to our meeting circle. In the meeting circle, what you're going to find is this basic daily message. And it doesn't really change much from day to day, because remember what I said, they need the repetition. When you look at different studies, some studies say 17 exposures, some say 25, but mostly we know that our students are going to need a lot of repetition with the same information, because they need to have this pattern where they can see what it looks like and know what is going to be there. And that's really what reading sometimes is. It's learning how to memorize. You write those sight words that you know you've memorized them, and that's what we're trying to have happen with them. So you can see I first put the date numerically, and then I start my letter. It's the same letter pretty much every time. Dear class, good morning. Today is, the weather is, and then I always ask a question. So we all come and we sit around a circle or a half circle, whatever, around this message. And as we read it, I point to the words, because I'm trying to teach them one-to-one correspondence if they don't know it. Now, when I teach younger kids, I have them point, but I don't really think the high school kids would appreciate, or they might be a little embarrassed to point to the different words. So I do that. And then we always ask a question, and we always answer that question in a complete sentence. So in this case, I've asked, what is your favorite color? And you'll notice I've even have a little tally going down below. So the first maybe 2 or 3 times that we come to this place, I will ask each student the question, and they will answer me. And notice I've given them the sentence stem, so they're going to answer me back with my favorite color is. And I'm going to keep tallies. After maybe the 3rd time, I release the responsibility of the question asking to them. So I'll ask the first student, what is your favorite color? That student responds back to me, my favorite color is red. Then that student passes the question to the next person. And so the question is being passed, answered, and passed around the circle until it comes back to me, where that student next to me asks me the question and I answer it. So they are learning how, we're building that oral proficiency now. They're learning how to ask a question and are learning how to answer a question. And then I like to bring a little math in here, and I will then say to them, oh, at first I might just say, oh, look, red was really popular. It got more votes than green. But I will then switch it over to how many people like red? And they need to tell me. How many people like green? And they tell me. And I might say, how many people answered the survey? And then the really hard question is, how many more people like red than green? So this is a really challenging question, which may take them some time to get. But somebody eventually will. And until they do, you're going to tell them and you're going to explain that answer, right? once somebody figures out what the answer is, in this case, 1, you're going to have them explain their answer, right? So always getting them to explain why they gave the answer that they gave. And so this is something that I try to do. Like I said, I ask, there's always a question every time, and if it is a question that will allow you to collect data, go ahead and do that, and then make sure you ask them questions about it. Now, near the news, I always have these charts because we want them to have that information because it goes in the news, right? So I want them to see what the days of the week are, the months of the year, and as well as the weather. Because these are going to be words that they need that they don't have yet. And these terms of cool and warm can be very confusing for the students. So it takes them a little bit of time. I won't even say a little bit of time. It takes them time to understand the difference between cool and cold and hot and warm, and to use those two terms of cool and warm correctly. But you have that information there, and what you also want to do is, because they have interrupted education, right? You want to explain to them and help them learn how to access any information that is around them in their environment. So these are hanging on the wall. We want them to start learning how to find answers to the questions. Now, I was thinking about how you could use this in your virtual classroom. And so one thing that I did was as you can see, color-coded the sentences. So at first, maybe you're going to read the news all together, but maybe you're going to call on different students to read different sentences, right? So this way, you can call on Maria to read the part in green, and somebody else can read the part in black, and who will read the orange sentence, right? So giving them that practice accessing this, and then you have a little bit more control over how much they read, and it also helps build their color vocabulary, right? What is blue and what is red, right? So this would be one idea for that. After a few weeks, I start putting blanks in the message. So in this case, you can see I've left out the day and the month and the weather. At first, I might just leave out the day and the weather. And then what I do is we go around and I'll ask, oh, who knows what today is? And somebody will tell me, and I'll give them the marker if we're working on the whiteboard or on chart paper, and they'll have to write in the day. Now, those charts are right there close by, so they can access the information to write down what they need, which is great. And then I'll ask somebody else to tell me the month or the day, and somebody else to give me the weather. So notice in this question that I have a do you question. So in this case, I'm also teaching them that how you answer a do you question, right? The answer is yes, I do, or no, I don't. So again, working on that oral proficiency and teaching them how to answer questions correctly. And after a while, I will also ask them, how am I going to answer this question, right? So do you like ice cream? And you want them to be able to generate the sentence stems or the sentences for you. Yes, I do, or no, I don't. Right? So I tell them, but eventually I start asking them, how do I do this? And then I'm thinking again about what you might do teaching online. So I hook this up to a Pear Deck, as you can see, and you can make the slide and then leave those blanks out, and then they could fill in the blanks. And each person could do that and you could see it. So that might be one idea for making it working in your virtual environment, and having the scaffolding is turning it into a Pear Deck slide, which is easy if you have Google Slides. And if you're not sure how to do that, then you just install the Pear Deck app, and then when you're ready to present it, you click on the add-ons and then open the Pear Deck, and it will present it like this, and the students will be able to join to this slide and put in the information. I also teach mechanics with this, right? So I will write the daily news correctly, but then one day I write it with some mistakes. And when we sit down, I tell them, I wrote the message today, but I made some mistakes. Can you find my mistakes? At first, they're not going to be able to tell you what the mistakes are. So you'll tell them. After some time, they will be able to tell you the mistakes, but they probably can't tell you why. So you want to keep pushing for that because you're always trying to get them to explain their answers. Eventually, they're going to be able to tell you, oh, Monday needs a capital M because it's the first day of the week. That's what you're trying to get out of them. Because as we know, as I believe, a lot of languages, they don't capitalize the first day of the first letter of the days or the months. So this will be a new skill for them, right, as well. Although as SIFE students, they might not know that anyway, regardless. But you want them to be able to explain their thinking and always explain. And as I said, it'll take time and you just have to keep coming back to it because they're not going to get it right away. But they will. And notice so you're teaching capitalization, you're teaching punctuation as well. And one thing that I forgot to mention at the beginning was that there are some high frequency words in this as well, right? Is, and, the, what, your, favorite. These are all words that they need. My as well, right? So these are words that they need to know, and they're going to see them all the time as you do this lesson. And one of the last things I want to share is after they've been doing this for several months, one day I give the marker to 2 students to write the message. Right? Oh my gosh, they are all in a tizzy. So while the rest of the class is reading in that first 10 minutes, they're writing their message. And typically what happens is it's not just 2, it becomes 3 or 4, and they're all over there conferring about what this should look like. And they won't do it perfectly, and it'll be a big mess, probably, and that's okay. It's very exciting to watch them work together to come up with a product like this. So they finish their message, we make the circle, we go through the message, we read it together, and then I point out the things that they have done that are correct. And I don't really touch too much on the things that are wrong, I'm just looking for the things that are right. And then I'm going to come back, we'll do this again, and then after we've done this a few times, I'm going to start asking the students to tell me 3 things that they noticed that are correct. Right? So they're going to be looking for things that are correct. And then they also, once they identify it, have to explain why it's correct. Right? So somebody might say, oh, Monday. Well, that doesn't tell me anything, right? So they need to be able to tell you that Monday has a capital, it's the first day, it's the first letter of the day of a week, right? So that's what you're trying to get them to do. One other thing is that they will get pretty good at this, and then they'll start to want to tell you what the writers have forgotten. Like, oh, Nancy and Sergio forgot this. And so I'll be like, okay, we'll come back to that. Let's go ahead and look for the things that they did that are correct, right? So I'm going to really push that they tell me the 3 things that are correct, and then I will let them tell me a couple of things that could be improved. But we always want to make sure that we're really stressing the things that they do that are right, because these are big accomplishments for them. The one thing that I think is really lovely about this is as we've been working on asking this question, and I've always been giving them the sentence stem on how to answer it, when the students write the message, notice they've put the sentence stem for the answer in their letter. And I just think that's wonderful. They now realize that their classmates are going to need some help with this, and they just put it right in there. And even though I had never written the daily message to look like that with the response right up in the thing, that's always where they put it, it seems like. But that's okay. But I do think it's great how they just make that second nature for them. Okay, so here we are. Just to sum up, we want students to develop a relationship with books. I just, today, it's not just SIFE students, it's all people today seem to be avoiding books or they don't like to read. And so we really want to develop readers because readers, right, readers change the world. Readers are critical thinkers. And so we want them to see a book as a friend and as something that they can turn to for information or inspiration, for entertainment. The second part is repetition is your friend, right? As I said at the beginning, these are students who are going through some tough times. So they're going to need to hear this over and over and over again, and that's okay. And I think if you think that they're bored with the message, you find out that they're not bored when you ask somebody to write the message and they can't. That lets you know that they are still learning from this. Always demand the students answer the daily question in a complete sentence, right? So you are teaching them to answer in complete sentences. And that is really important too. Don't let them off with just giving you a yes or no. Yes, I do. No, I don't, right? Yes, I have. No, I have not. Whatever it is. And then, of course, as their language skills improve, you want them to explain their answers. So at first, they might not be able to explain their answers. But if they can identify what a problem is or what the answer is, that's really good. And I will say that at first, even on the question, I don't force students to answer, and I can't imagine you will either. But if we pass the question and somebody doesn't want to answer, the first couple of times, I don't push it, but they don't get a free pass forever, right? After a while, I'm going to expect them to answer, and they know that as well. Okay. And that brings us to the very end. So I want to thank you for listening to me today. I'm providing you my email address there. And you can send me questions or maybe some ideas that we can use to make this lesson better. As I said at the beginning, I hope it is something that you can use and that I've given you some good ideas on ways to incorporate this into your class.